Welcome to Empowering DIY. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about heat pumps. The last video I did, we did servicing of a condensing unit outside. The inside unit we have has been cleaned and serviced already, but it's getting cold now, and it's time to start considering what would happen during the winter time, especially the first time it gets really cold outside. Down here in the South, I'm in South Carolina, but anytime around Georgia, South Carolina, Alabama, these kind of lower areas, we don't get really cold weather, but it gets cold enough sometimes that heat strips have to come in. Usually anything below 20 degrees, there's a good chance your heat strips are going to come on. A lot of people call them heat strips or auxiliary heat or emergency heat. Any of those, if you see on your thermostat, where if you have like a digital thermostat or anything like that, it says EM heat, that's your emergency heat. But those heat strips also come on when it gets too cold outside and there's a temperature swing where the heat pump is no longer working like it should. The heat strips will take over and they'll start heating up into that set point. So the biggest thing that happens that I know of, a lot of people don't check their heat strips or don't service it right before the winter, and 2-3 o'clock in the morning when it's really cold outside, your heat comes on. It can't keep up because it's really cold outside and your heat strips come on. The next thing that happens is you get a burning smell, and a lot of times it'll even set off your smoke detectors because it is a smoke. But what it is it's the heat. The heat strips are burning off the dust. So the best thing I can do for anybody is warn you to check your heat strips out before the winter time, before it gets cold outside. So right now we're in October. I done lost my mind. So right now we're in October, and it's supposed to be in the 40s, so I'm not concerned about it now, but now's the time to check it. So I'm gonna go ahead and check over my heat pump, the air handler inside the attic, and I'll show you what I check out myself and show you what you can look for. And if you don't have the expertise or the confidence that you can check it yourself, the best thing you can do is right now take your heat, put it in emergency heat, and let it run for about 30 minutes. If it's 75 degrees in your house or 74 degrees in your house, turn it up to 76 or 77 degrees. Or if it's 70 degrees in your house, turn it up to 72, 73, put on emergency heat. And it's gonna take those heat strips and it's gonna try to heat your house up to 73 degrees with the heat strips only. You will get that burning smell, and you might possibly set off your smoke detectors. But by you doing it yourself and you're actually trying to cause a situation, you get those heat strips burned off and cleaned up, and it avoids it happening at 2 o'clock in the morning, because there's nothing more terrifying than have heat strips come on and set your smoke detectors off that early in the morning, or any time for that matter. I'd hate to be sitting on the couch and all of a sudden your smoke detectors start going off. It's still terrifying. So let's do it now. Let's get ready for the winter by getting them ready. So give me 1 second. We're gonna get on up in the attic. I'm gonna show you what it looks like, show you what I check out when I do a pre-heat inspection, and we'll go from there. So give me a couple minutes and we'll be up in the attic. All right. So we're up here in the attic. This is a standard air handler. This is a Train, but Goodman, Heel, Tempstar, Train, there's so many different brands out there, I can't even think of them all. They're all, a lot of the heat pumps are mostly the same. So when I'm talking about this, you can basically reference this to a lot of heat pumps. Now, I'm not saying this is gonna be exactly like yours, but it's gonna be pretty close. So first thing you want to do is, like if you've watched any of our previous videos, you want to always pull the power off. So my helper's gonna open the disconnect. Okay, remember push it and that'll stay up like that. Now pull it straight out, give it a good yank.
I don't want to fall.
All right, let me do it. Or not. Click. If I say All right, so we got the disconnect pulled, and this one has a breaker here. Right here, I'm gonna turn that off and I'm gonna show you why here in a minute. Now, never assume the power is off on a unit. If you're doing this for the first time and you've never checked it or anything, you need to take a multimeter and you need to check all the lugs and make sure that your power is off. I've already confirmed that my disconnect works. I've already confirmed that the power is off and everything. So I'm not going to show you exactly how to do that. If you want to know how to check power, let me know and I can do a whole video on that, because I don't want to spend too much time wasting your time on that. We're talking about heat strips today. So we'll get to it. Most of these screws are 5/16. Some are quarter, some are 3/8, but 90% of the air handlers that I've ran into has been 5/16. So I always take a drill with a 5/16 bit up here, and a magnetic bit really helps. Pull the cover off. Okay. Now, try to get you in a little bit. Okay, so here's the air handler inside. Right here is your evaporator coil, and then you have your blower, your indoor blower motor. It's got the squirrel cage inside, and this is the electric motor that runs it. On a good spring cleaning, or even if you haven't had it serviced for the fall or whatever, you want to take this out and clean off all the whole squirrel cage inside. Ours is really clean, so I'm not going to do that now. Like I said, this video is all about heat strips. So I'm gonna try to get in here real close. This is your heat strips, and this is your overload, your high temperature overload switch right there. And then on the bottom side, I know it's hard to get in here and look, but here's the other side of your heat strips. Now this is only a 10 kW heat strip kit, so it's going to be smaller. You can have a bigger one, 15 kW or so, and it's going to be like 3 sets of heat strips. This one's only 2. So one of the things that I do when I check the heat strips out, all you need is a screwdriver. This is a multi screwdriver with a flathead bit. The reason I'll turn the power off and I want to talk about is one of the big problems people have with heat strips is they have a really high amp draw. Okay, so you need to check when you have a high amp draw, well, anytime, but especially during a high amp draw, any loose connections here can cause a lot of problems, and then any loose connections on your heat strips here can cause problems. So all I do is, it doesn't take but a minute, I just go through here and I check each breaker or each connection point. So like right here is a connection point. Just check it, make sure it's tight. Now when I say check it, make sure it's tight, don't come in here and crank down on it as hard as you can, because you will break those lugs. But all you're trying to do is feel for any looseness, and you'll know right away if it's tight or not. If you can't turn it, it's tight. Then come down here, this is your feed in, it's tight. Okay, it's tight. And then for all these lugs here, you can take your hand and wiggle it, and if there's no movement, it's tight. You can get in here with a 7/16 wrench, but I don't think it's necessary if it's nice and tight right there. Then on top, if you can move these nuts, they're not tight, but like I said, they feel tight. And then I just do a little tug test on the wire. I don't pull on them hard, I just do a tug test, because they move around. They're made for expansion and contraction a little bit, so you don't want them to be like super tight, because if this gets a little hot, they will expand a little bit. So that's why they wiggle. And then I just go through here and check all my wires. That's why I make sure I turn all the power off to inside here, so I don't feel it's not dangerous for me to stick my hand in there. That's why it's best to use that disconnect there. confirm your power. Now, some of you people that have bigger heat pumps, say you have a 7.5 ton air conditioner with a 30 kW heat strips. This breaker is way too small. Okay, so this one right here is a 60 amp breaker. Okay, now for this 10 kW heat strips, that's plenty because it runs that and your blower motor. 7.5 ton unit or anything bigger is going to be, you might have 2 breakers or 2 disconnects, possibly fused, and some of those will be for the extra set of heat strips. This will be wider. This would come out here and it would have more sets of heat strips in it. And the reason I'm telling you that is you need to make sure you have all the power off. Make sure that either the 2 disconnects, or if it has 2 breakers, if you notice right here, there's an empty slot. Another breaker could fit right here. So if you have 2 sets of breakers, make sure you have all the power off. Do not get shocked because, oh, Mitch said you're fine with that 1 disconnect. I'm telling you right now, make sure you check everything. Okay, so as you can see, my transformer, or my breaker's here, my transformer for my UV light is here, all this wiring is here. So I'm not going to pull my heat strips out. It's just aggravating and it's unnecessary. I can take these 2 screws out, pull this out of the way, unplug this, pull everything out of the way, clean it off. I think because they're working that we don't need to pull the heat strips out. So what I do next is, after I've checked all these wires and everything, I'm going to turn the unit on and I'm going to take my amp meter and I'm going to show you what an amp draw is for heat strips. Okay, so another tip. If you have a UV light, follow it to where the plug is. There should be a plug. Oh, right here. Okay. Take it and unplug your UV light. And the reason is, I'm going to turn this unit on with this panel open. So I don't want this UV light to come on and blind me. This is very dangerous. You do not want to look at this. This creates UV light. It's like looking at the sun. Okay, so unplug it. Make sure you don't have any wires here. All these wires are tight. Everything's good. So what we're going to do now is get my amp meter ready. I got a Fluke. This is a 324. Let's see it in the light. Yeah, the Fluke 324. You can buy a field piece, a Fluke, a cheaper off-brand one, I'm not sure. But you need, if you want to do a test like this, you need a amp clamp. And this is your amp clamp here. So what you're gonna do is we're gonna check each leg for power. Now before I turn the power on to this unit, what I like to do is I like to make myself some room, and I like to find where my legs are to where I can come in here and check my amp draw like this on each side without touching anything. Because again, it's dangerous when you have 240 volts in here. You want to be very careful. So now that I know where my power is going in, I have my meter ready. It's on amps and my batteries are dead. Stand by. All right, you know how nothing ever goes right when you try to do a video, right? My batteries died, but I got it on. So I have it on amp, which is here. That means we're going to read through the amp clamp. And let's see if we can turn the light on so you can see. That doesn't help, but it's showing your AAC, that's your amp. Well, that's your hold button. That doesn't work. There's the light. And now we got it on. So I got my amp reader ready. I know where I'm going to take my readings from. Now we can go ahead and turn the power on. Okay, I got my power on there. Turn this breaker on here. So here's the cool thing about having a smart thermostat. I can go right, we have an Ecobee thermostat. So I can pull it up right now. It says it's offline, but the reason it's offline was because, duh, I had the power off. So I need to give it a minute to connect. And as soon as I get it back connected to the Wi-Fi, we'll get it turned on. Okay, so this is how you make your family mad in 5 seconds, right? So this is my Ecobee thermostat. You hit there. All right, if you look very closely, you got your heat up top, and cool, auto, and then aux. Aux is our heat strips. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put it on heat strips, right? And if you look right there, set point 64, it's 72 in the house. So for us to check the heat strips, we need to turn it up. So we're gonna turn it up to 78, okay? And we'll change it to 2 hours just because I want it to run for a minute. We're not gonna let it run 2 hours. And then we'll give it a timeout. It should be pretty quick. And there we go. The heat strips come on. Your fan come on. And boy, I don't even know if you can see it, but smoke come out because of all the dust. So my smoke detector is probably about to go off, which is good. We wanted to do that now. All right, so you check carefully. Pulling 20 amps. All right, on that one. Go to the next one. Pulling 20 amps. All right. So that tells me that both sets of heat strips are running good. Even if you don't know what the amp draw is on heat strips, you should know they should be around 15 to 25, 26 amps per leg of heat strips. So there's two separate on a 10 kW. As you can see, there was two wires. There was two sections, and we checked the two wires. That's because you got 240 volts going to two separate sets of heat strips, okay? So that's why you got to check both. With 20 amps on each side, that's good. Now, what this tells us is we've done two things now. We've checked to make sure that our heat strips are operational, and we've burned off any possible dust that's on those heat strips. And between now and when it really gets cold, there's no possible way it's going to get so full of dust that it'll do this again. So once a year is good to go. So do yourself a favor. If you're capable of doing this type of check before the winter season, go ahead and do it. If not, the least you can do is go ahead and put it on emergency heat. Let them run 5 minutes, 6 minutes, something like that. Get them good and hot. Get all the dust burned off of them. So when it's time for the winter season, you don't have to worry about this in the middle of the night. So give me a minute. Let's get this thing buttoned back up. Now another tip, if you go ahead and check this and you got it running with the heat strips on, as you can see, it slowed down finally. If you do this and you have the heat strips on, don't just turn the breaker off real fast, because you can cause damage to your heat strips. What happens is that it has a time delay built into it, and the heat strips will turn off first. Let the fan blow a minute, or 30 seconds, 40 seconds, whatever it is, and it'll cool those heat strips off, and then it'll turn the fan off. So when you're done checking your heat strips, don't just throw the breaker or something like that, because you can actually damage your heat strips. So now that it's off, I'm go ahead and turn the power off. Let's see here. I guess we need to let the power on that discharge. Okay. There you have it. Units put back together, and we're good to go for the winter. So just to recap real quick, it's almost winter time, it's almost cold. Northerners probably don't have to worry about this. I don't know if you have a heat pump up north, you can do the same check, but like I said, most people up north, when it gets really cold outside, heat pumps are useless. Anytime it's less than 20 degrees outside, your ambient air is no longer have much heat in it. After 20 degrees, the ambient temperature or the ambient air doesn't have much heat left, so that's why we rely on heat strips. Okay, so check your heat strips out, and if you have any questions about a refrigeration cycle, I'll be glad to go in depth on that. If you want to, I can explain it. If you have any more questions on heat strips, I can go into more depth, and I'll try to throw a couple clips of what a package heat pump looks like, and if I can find any pictures of that. And I'm just showing you what I have at my house. So again, if you got any questions, comment, email me, hit me up on Instagram. Make sure y'all subscribe and hit the bell so anytime I get any of these new videos out, y'all see them. Thank y'all for watching Empowering DIY. Have a good day.